President Stephen Jones. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, guys.
Man, how are we doing? It's been a while since we chatted.
Well, I'm doing really good. It's just been, had a busy off season, as you know, between hiring our defensive coaching staff, free agency, and then draft preparation. We've had our hands full.
You know, and I heard, and there's even more than that. There's reports that Jerry was at the bargaining session last week with the Referees Association, and I would love to know from you, especially being part of the competition committee, how important do you believe it is for the NFL to get a deal done with the Referees Association and the regular refs for the regular season?
Well, I was, because of my role on the competition, I was actually there as well, and certainly, we'd like to agree to a deal with our officials. At the same time, it's a work in progress. We have a lot of respect, but also, it's business, and, just like any other negotiation, until it's done, you really don't like to comment on anything.
These are always cordial visits, too, right? No fisticuffs breaking out there?
No, they were professional and cordial.
Okay, I like to hear that.
Oh, we've talked with you a lot about the salary cap in the past, and I know people get caught up about when they talk about the draft. They say, "Hey, what does the team need right now?" But whenever you talk about the salary cap, you talk about planning 2, 3, 4 years into the future. Do you have to have that same kind of mindset when you go into these drafts?
Yeah, I think it's all part of the bigger picture, and you certainly as you focus on the draft and what it can be for you and what that's going to look. I mean, one of the great things about our draft, especially this day and time, whether it's college or almost anything, for us to have personnel certainty. If you can have success in the draft, you're going to have that player either 4 or 5 years, at a number that's reasonable. And certainly that's why I think, most teams would tell you that's the foundation of their football team. With the salary cap that we have today, it's so important. The draft's just so important.
Would that potentially lure you into saying, we'd be okay taking an older player in the draft because maybe as they get a little older, we don't have to get that second contract with them, or does that matter?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I think these players that are older, I think it's a two-edged sword. One is really good. Certainly you're seeing it with quarterbacks. We were just talking about offensive linemen, how important it is as well. But some of these guys coming out are 24, 25 years old. But the flip side of that is they have a tremendous amount of experience, and which really helps them transition right into the professional game. The more and more you look at these things, these players who only have started, 12 games in college, 24 is obviously a lot better, and 36 is better than that, and a 4-year starter is better than that. But, that really enables them to transition usually at a faster rate if they have you still got to have the skill set and the things that come with being a professional football player, but that helps. Now, the downside of that is some of them are going to be then 28, 29, 30 years old when they come up on their second contract.
Now, you just mentioned, obviously, quarterback could be one position that would be beneficial. Are there any other positions the team has identified as saying, more starts, and perhaps sometimes an older player is not so bad at these positions either?
No, I just mentioned it. The offensive line, I think, is really, it's an advantage to have played. It's really coming into play in our evaluations. How many years have they started at a particular school? Certainly, anything that any position that gets into really, needing experience is helpful. Obviously, some of the more skilled, highly skilled positions, whether it's a corner or a receiver or running back, those type of places, you can obviously get away with having elite athletic skills and being, quite a bit younger and not as much experience.
Now, Stephen, I'm wondering, have you fallen in love with any one particular player, or do you think there will be a player you're going to love landing at 12 no matter what?
Well, in the draft, you can fall in love with many. Unlike life, you're with your wife. In the draft, you certainly can fall in love with multiple players, and certainly we have a bunch of players on the board that we really have a high opinion of that we think could really help our football team, and certainly that's how you end up stacking them. And if they're in our first round, probably any team would say this, then there's a lot of love for that player.
I'm guessing perhaps, since you just mentioned that, the draft board isn't totally locked in just yet, but do you have a general idea of maybe how many first-round grades y'all are going to have?
It's still a little early, but, usually we're in that 16 to 20, 21, 22 range.
That's a big number right there. I like hearing that one right now. How much?
I don't know that we'll get there this year, in terms of the 20s, but, we're grinding it out right now. And as you said, we hadn't put the final grades on anything. And, this will obviously evolve into a board that we really have confidence in.
As you guys are putting together that board, I've always been fascinated. How much do you feel like you can learn from the players that have the draft visits with y'all that obviously wouldn't pop up by just watching film?
Yeah, I think anytime you get to spend more time with a player, and especially when you bring one in for a 30 visit, you're getting almost 24 hours with that player to really, delve deep into a lot of areas. And, I think that's why we've ended up over the years drafting quite a few guys that were actually in on the 30 visit. Now they're coming on the 30 visit because obviously we've seen a lot of things that are interesting to us, and we want to get to know more about those particular players and even have more detailed work on them.
We've discussed Jermod McCoy a lot, special talent, as a lot of these guys are. We did hear Jerry say no red shirts, and we've kind of stuck with that a lot. Do you think he qualifies a red shirt, or has he cleared that hurdle for you guys?
Yeah, that's a work in progress. We're trying to, do all the work that we need to do to, to get our hands around what his status will be for, we start with everything, what his status is for the mini camps, what his status is for the training camp, and then ultimately will he be able to play part of the season, none of the season. All those are levels that then we put into an equation and decide where we might come down on that particular player.
And you kind of discussed, the amount of games earlier, but how much does missing one full year affect your approach with a guy?
No, this happens, and there's been a lot of players in this league that miss a year due to injury that really come back and have great careers. So I don't know that that's a deciding factor. I think obviously, if you miss the entire year this year or miss the back half of the year, but it's going to linger into a big part of our coming season, then that's probably a bigger factor than somebody who just missed last year but's already ready to go and start minicamp.
There are a lot of folks who kind of think this draft will be more trade-filled than past drafts. Have you gotten that sense at all 9 days out that have there been more phone calls or pre-draft team-to-team discussion compared to maybe a usual draft?
No, I think it's too early to tell that. I think, next week as people finalize their boards and start to strategize, have their strategy sessions, then that comes into play. But I'm still a big believer that most of these trades, happen, as you're on the board. Players fall off that you wanted, and then you're willing to come out. Players are staying on the board that you might not think might be there, and then you're attempted to move up a little bit. You might not be willing to, give up what it costs to go way up the draft. But if a player starts to fall, then you get a little thought that, hey, maybe we could move up and it wouldn't cost as much, and we still get the guy that that we think is the best player for us in a particular draft, depending on where you pick.
Can you? I always love Kevin and I try to play this game a little bit. Can you describe the anatomy of a trade? Like, what's that really like in that room on those phones from your past experience? Is that?
My past experience is that normally when you're on the clock is when the activity starts, and usually it's someone calling you wanting to move up is usually how it happens. Usually if you're wanting to move down and you're starting to have to call, the next 15 teams below you, that's not a good sign. Usually if someone's wanting to come up, they're calling you, and especially, in the first round. But usually that holds for the whole draft that, teams see a player they want and they call, and, you hope in a lot of cases that 2 or 3 teams are calling for the pick, and then you have a competitive situation for your particular pick, and especially if you're willing to come out of it.
But you would never say, well, really, because the Ravens just said they would offer me this as a bluff, right?
Well, I can't speak for other people, and I probably shouldn't speak to us.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Now,
I think they're always honest, Kevin.
Sure. Everybody in all aspects of life is always honest. Now, we've talked a lot about the origins way back in the day of the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart for the draft. How much has that evolved, whether it's, more of a Rich Hill model or anything else? Has that draft value chart changed a lot over the decades?
Well, I have to correct you in all due respect. That was a Mike McCoy draft chart. At the end of the day, I watched him put it together, and he showed me how he was putting it together. Obviously, Jimmy and Jerry used it, but that was a Mike McCoy draft chart, who was a valedictorian at Oklahoma and Petroleum Engineers, and understood how to chart those things and come up with values. Now, you can imagine with analytics and AI the way they are today, these charts are constantly evolving. You got to know the data that's going into them to understand it. Everybody has, what is quote unquote what most people feel like is a standard over the last 3 to 5 years. But then there's always one that you might have that you say, hey, we think the draft chart's evolved, and it may give you an advantage if someone's willing to go off the old chart. It may give you an advantage in what you feel analytically is the true value.
I like how he's giving those engineers their credit where credit's
Oh,
due.
yeah. No, I appreciate that info.
Yeah.
Stephen, I always wonder how challenging it is to get a read on players from smaller programs like, say, a Toledo or something like that versus bigger programs like maybe a Texas, based on how their competition is. How much weight does that have, and how do y'all go through that?
Yeah, I think it's big. I mean, obviously, it's able to project, if you're coming from a Power 4 school, for a top program playing against the very best. And obviously, that's even more so the case today as some of these smaller school young men, have found their way to the top Power 4 schools with NIL and all the things that are out there now. So there's not near as many, players playing at the smaller schools. Obviously, you have the occasional. I mean, Rebel was one of those guys that was at a small school, and he stuck with where he was, and you run across those guys. So, but at the end of the day, certainly you like to see. That's why you have a Senior Bowl. You like to see these guys going against top level competition that are going to be drafted as well. Versus it's harder to project when you see them against a lot lesser level of competition. Obviously, they should be dominant, but you still got to do some projecting that is more difficult than when you see Alabama and Georgia going at it, and seeing those guys compete against one another. You get a better feel for what it's going to look like on our level.
Obviously, Stephen, and for us, it's really exciting to have 2 first-round picks. It's a opportunity to do something special. How much of a culture-changing mentality are you looking for in one or both of these picks? Does that need to be a factor?
Yeah, I think it all factors in at the end of the day, and certainly we're trying to create an identity and a culture overall for this football team. Certainly on defense, we felt like we lacked that last year, defense in particular, that we didn't have the identity, the culture, that we needed, that the players were buying into and playing with an edge. And certainly that's the goal. And then ultimately the goal is to have a culture and an identity for our entire football team that Shotty's trying to develop in terms of, the type of men that we bring in here to compete day in and day out. That certainly, when they're working together every day, are a positive influence on what we're ultimately trying to be as an organization, as a football team.
We're talking with Stephen Jones right here on 105.3 The Fan. You walk through something that I think is really fascinating, and fans fall into this trap. I have been guilty of this trap. Do you think sometimes the fan base might underestimate the difficulty of trading back when you were lining up like, hey, we should have traded back. We could have got that same player. Do you think people underestimate how tough it is when your pick is up and nobody is calling?
There's that old deal when the phone doesn't ring, you know it's me or it's a problem. And certainly, when you're trying to call and go back, the price goes way down, and it's really hard to get value. We've certainly attempted if we really do want to trade down, but most of the time, when you're having to make those calls to say, hey, would you give me something for this? What would you give me for this pick? Or here's what the chart says, would you be willing to do it? We're willing to come out. It's not near as successful as when the phone's ringing and they're wanting to come up and get the pick.
Have you guys, I know you said it'll heat up a lot last week. Can you confirm or deny if you guys have gotten any calls for first round pick offers for George Pickens thus far?
Yeah, you hate to get into things like that, but no, we've had no one call, with interest in George Pickens.
All right, last thing from me, Stephen, before we let you go. Could you see yourself falling in love with an Ohio State player?
Absolutely. There's you look at that, and no way is this being critical, but you look at some of their guys and you go, how in the hell did they ever lose a football game? When you look at all the Buckeyes that are on the board, and obviously they had a great football team, and hats off to Indiana. They ended up putting it together and were able to pull it off and win the thing. And but certainly there's the Buckeyes have more than their fair share of guys in the first round of this draft.
Thank you very much for the time, as always, and we'll catch up with you again after the draft.
Appreciate being on with you guys.
Here you go, Stephen Jones right here on 105.3 The Fan. Man, I looked it up. I guess I have lost to history the role that Mike McCoy had in that. I always thought of it as the Jimmy Johnson one, and I'm glad he told me, well,
yeah.
I was there. I saw how it happened.
I think maybe, Kevin, the year that you didn't go to Oxford with us was the year that I kind of chatted about that.
Thanks
with
a
him.
lot, Noah.
Sorry, child. But yeah, I think that was the year that I kind of chatted about that, and I learned that. So, hey, that was fun, man. I'm looking for exciting draft ahead of us.
Yeah. KNC Masterpiece right here on 105.3 The Fan. You got me, Kevin Hagelin. You got, Corey Majors, and of course the famous Alec Medford. Momentarily, we will be joined by Kyle Yeomans. But right now, it's time for the C Block, starring Corey Major.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And, I
believe he is here.
I just want to point out that I did send Kyle Yeomans a text that gave the link to the Ape Civil War.
Sure.
That we still have yet to bring up on air, so maybe we don't bring it up with him because
that's actually the only thing I want to talk to you about.
Does our audience know? But here's the thing: he never responded, and I don't know if he was like just in shock that we would ask something of such a professional, or if he was just like I don't know if this is a bit or not. But we do also now have Zach Wolchuk storming in.
And Zach sent a really salty email.
Very weird email we all got from Zach Wolchuk today.
Earlier.
Did you want to say something to Kyle Yeomans?
I wanted to say I love you, Kyle, but I can't believe that you guys had to book Kyle Yeomans when I'm right here.
Yeah, well, you said you needed 2 days advance.
Yeah.
You could have asked me 48 hours ago.
We did ask Kyle 48 hours
I just want to tell Kyle I love you. Go Mean Green. I miss you.
All right.
Miss you too, buddy.
Okay, there is
I told you to go F yourself.
He did not. That's not how he talks.
Zach walked away. He doesn't know.
It is Kyle Yeomans from DallasCowboys.com. I do believe he will be the point man for your broadcast coverage of the Cowboys draft and the draft this year. Kyle, how are we doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, Zach and myself, we're both gonna host at different times, but yeah, pumped to get on the coverage next week. I did not reply to that message, Corey, and I apologize for not doing so, but the reason why I did not reply is because I immediately clicked the link and I read the whole article. So if you want to talk about it, I'm ready, and I have quite strong opinions on why it's happening.
All right.
However, I did read the article, and that's why I didn't respond.
See?
Because I got so intertwined with the article that I just forgot to go back with it.
Then I have constructed the perfect question for you, Kyle. What is more of a concern for you at this moment, the Ape Civil War or the Cowboys taking Keldrick Falk at pick number 12? What is more concerning in your world at this moment?
You know, that's a phenomenal question.
Thank you.
And it's because there are so many layers to it. I'm going to say the Ape Civil War because I don't think they're going to take Keldrick Falk at 12.
Okay.
I don't think there's really any interest there. So and that's how confident I am in that. And so if that's the case, then I'm saying, yeah, the Ape Civil War is definitely far more concerning.
Which one of the reasons for this violence, though, between the apes do you think is?
So what's the story? Lay it out for me.
All right. There's some in the Nagogo chimps, Kevin, have started fighting, and there are a couple of different factors that could be going on here. One, scarce food and competition amongst each other. All right. There used to be a lot of food in the forest. Now, not so much. The other is that they have grown too large, according to a University of Michigan study.
Like large in terms of actual size?
Too many people.
Okay.
There are too many chimps, if you will. So too many chimps, and now you can't keep it all together when you have that many. And then there's another theory that about 5 males died. And then that has now, they were critical peace brokers in all of this, and so there's a lot going on with this. Which one of those theories, Kyle, do you think might be the most relative?
I think it's the last one. I think it's the fact that they said the studies showed that back in 2014, there were like 5 elders amongst these two tribes that helped kind of bridge the gap between, and we're making friends between both of the groups of chimpanzees or whatever they are, and they would go from there.
Doesn't feel like you read that article.
He did.
From there, it ended up, when they all passed away, it was like the younger generation took over, but then they were met with kind of the scarcity and the overpopulation and things like that. So I think it's a combination of the both, but I think the initial spark happened when those peace brokers kind of moved along.
Yeah, good times can create weak chimps, Kevin, and weak chimps create hard times.
So unfortunately, us as humans sometimes have the tendency to interfere where we're not needed. Is that going to happen in this situation? Because we need the apes to figure it out for themselves, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what the study ended up saying. They didn't say it at the end of the article or anything, but it kind of said there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. They're going to just let them fight it out and see what happens and let nature kind of run its course, which is probably the best way to do it.
Are you nervous at all that, within the last 15 years, we've had a plethora of films that show that the apes come out stronger because of this, and they eventually overthrow our way of living?
Nah, I'm more, at this point, I'm more worried that the Cowboys would take Keldrick Falk at 12 than that.
Okay.
See, this is why he had 3
good.
kids. This is why he had 3 kids, Kevin, so that the humans could continue to overpopulate or populate.
I'm trying to build numbers here, right?
I gotcha.
There's power in numbers.
All right. Would Keldrick Falk be in play at 20, you think, or they just don't love that player?
I think he would be more in play, but I don't think he's at the top of the list at either spot, to be completely honest. I think Keldrick Falk, to me, he's a good football player, and he's my number 4 edge rusher on my board. But when you look at the fit that people are trying to pigeonhole him into is the fact that he played that 4-eye, 5-technique spot at Auburn, and that's been a big part of the conversation this offseason with Christian Parker. He's going to need somebody that's athletic and long and has some pass rush ability to play that 4-eye spot. But really, Dallas wants a bigger body there. They want somebody that's more like 290, 295, as opposed to Keldrick Falk, who listed at 276 at the NFL Combine. So he would need to put on about 15 pounds for him to be a true fit at that 4-eye spot. Doesn't mean he can't do that. It just means he's not as good of a fit as people are kind of leading on to putting him in there. At the other side of things, if you wanted to move him outside, maybe make him stand up outside outside linebacker, edge rusher, then they would want him more like 260, 265. So he'd have to lose 10 or 15 pounds. So with all of the conversation and the rumors and the floating it out there that I've seen over the last week, I just don't know if it's as great of a fit that it's worth taking over other players that are also out there that fit you from a board standpoint and from a scheme standpoint. I think Keldrick Faulk's a little bit further down their board, and I think he's a little bit outside of their scheme. Doesn't mean he's not interesting to Dallas or that Dallas wouldn't take him. I just think there are a bevy of other names before him at both 12 and 20.
All right, so we've probably talked 12 and 20 as much as we possibly can overall. And everybody, again, those are two exciting picks for the Cowboys. That's going to be night one for sure. But when it comes to further, the Cowboys have further draft picks to work with here, and they need to use them all correctly. Let's look at their third round pick. What kind of players do you see there that you like, and how much of an impact do you think that player needs to make that early? Because we feel like these first two picks probably need to be starters and probably need to make an impact pretty early in the season.
Yeah, and you want 92 to 112 to also have that same possibility, right?
Yeah.
You want them to still have immediate impact. And so I think it all kind of intertwines, but there's just a big gap in the middle. Because you want to pick two starters at 12 and 20, but what position group gives you the best opportunity to do that at 92 and 112? I don't think they're against double dipping at either one of those spots, right? First round, third, and fourth round. I don't think they're against double dipping twice in the first four picks. Now, I think slot corner, the nickel spot, I think you can find a starting caliber nickel at 92. We talked about that a little bit on the draft show this week with guys like Chandler Rivers out of Duke and Keontae Scott out of Miami. I mean, there are multiple guys at 92 that might be there.
Would Rivers be there?
I think he would be. Talking to guys like Nick Harris, he thinks he's going to go in the middle of the third. I think he could maybe stretch to that point. I had a fourth on it. So I don't know. That's maybe an optimistic side of things. But he's not the only one there either. I mentioned Scott. There are a couple other guys maybe at the outside cornerback spot that you feel confident in throwing him in the mix. Maybe a Malik Muhammad out of Texas. And then you go into linebacker. I don't know if they love the linebacker options in the first round or in the third round, right? And if that's the case, maybe then that's a trade conversation.
Do you feel like the second round kind of gives you some good linebacker options? Because I keep telling Kevin, oh man, I wish I had a second rounder for a Jacob Rodriguez or an Anthony Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of those names, you could throw C.J. Allen into the mix. I know there's kind of a question mark maybe on his knee. I know there was like a medical thing that popped up that teams were checking on. I don't have any details on that moving into it. But yeah, I think linebacker fits better in the second round than it maybe does in the third or the fourth round. Josiah Trotter out of Missouri is another name that I think Dallas would be interested in if he was available at the back half of the third. I don't think he'll get there. I think he's a second round type of player. So, I think linebacker, the more that I go into or get closer to the draft process, the more I don't know if they're going to come out with a linebacker. I think their linebacker plan maybe falls elsewhere, whether it's a trade or whatever it may be. I don't know if it fits their value of where they're picking unless they go and trade up to a Sonny Styles or a Sonny Styles falls to them. I don't know if they leave day one or day two with a linebacker in hand. Now, I do like the options at safety a little bit later. I like some options at edge rusher a little later. Guys like Romello Hyatt out of Texas Tech or Zion Young out of Missouri. I mean, those guys are great, and they could maybe fall a little bit. Kieron Crawford out of Auburn. So there are options at those spots, but it depends on who you end up picking at 12 and 22.
Okay, I asked this of Wolchuk and I asked this of Broadus, and I screwed up by saying position because it got into the positional value conversation, but I'm trying to avoid that. What player solves the most problems for the Cowboys at 12?
And why is it Caleb Downs?
It probably is Caleb Downs, and the reason being is the Swiss Army knife of Christian Parker's scheme is the nickel. And that's going to be the case. If you can play a guy there that is going to be possibly a generational type of talent at that position, because people are talking about Caleb Downs in the same light as they did about Kyle Hamilton. You take that type of player and you throw him into a spot that's highlighted so significantly in this defense, it's going to make everybody else better. It's going to make everybody else a high-end, or it makes everybody else kind of fall into what they need to do in this system. So if you throw Caleb Downs into the mix, you throw him at that safety/nickel, then all of a sudden, and they're going to play nickel maybe 70% of the time, a 4-2-5 possibility. If that's the case, then I really like Caleb Downs in that spot. If you wanted to say a blue chip edge rusher, a David Bailey, I wouldn't disagree with you there, because if you can provide a pass rush alongside Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark, then all of a sudden your secondary benefits with that too, and it's less time for them to cover. So I think those are my two names. It's a Caleb Downs out of Ohio State, David Bailey out of Texas Tech.
Well, I am 1,000,000% there with you on Caleb Downs.
He's awesome.
What is your hierarchy of cornerbacks?
On my board, or what do you think?
On your board.
Is looking at. Yeah, I've got Mansour Delane and Javon McCoy. Those are my two first-round guys. I have Delane first, mostly because of the injury and whatever McCoy has been going through. I still think McCoy's 2024 tape is incredible.
Yeah.
And then I've got Colton Hood right at the top of the second round. He's my third corner. Chris Johnson follows that. Avion Terrell is right after that, and then Brandon Cisse. So 1 through 6 there. And I mean, Dallas has formally met with all 6 of those guys, Delane, McCoy, Hood, Johnson, Terrell, and Cisse. And so if they tip their hand at all about where they could be looking, they're shopping the cornerback position pretty hard.
Well, I think you just displayed not only your knowledge of the draft, but your versatility with your ability to sway between the chimp Civil War and the mock drafts
so well,
and your scouting reports. Thank you very much, sir.
This is why you called me instead of Zach Wolchuk, who has his own show on this station starting at 2 o'clock.
Man, it's a long show, too, so I get you.
He's got 5 hours worth of coverage coming up, and he would have never read that article. There's no way he would have ever done that.
He would have skimmed it, but you're right. He wouldn't have had any depth there, when it comes to Wolchuk. But we appreciate you, man. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Talk to you next week.
There you go, Kyle Yeomans, who
I think he was saying also that McCoy was second after Delane, Kevin. He said that Delane was first.
Understood there. And he's going to be heading up, or a huge part of the draft coverage right here on 105.3 The Fan.
It's going to be one of those situations where you have two geniuses battling over who's the smarter one with every one of their takes.
And then the third genius just sits back and lets them
Oh,
argue.
yeah.
Yeah, buddy, welcome back. Time for a special guest to join us to talk NFL draft here on The Fan. Our path to the draft brought to you by Pluckers. Join us at all Pluckers locations April 23rd for our annual draft party. Segments brought to you by the Frankels. If you've been injured in a car or truck wreck, call the Frankels first, 214